everyone. Welcome to Comic-Con at Home. I'm here with Angeline Boulley and Faridah Àbíké-Íyímídé on thrillers. I would love to introduce you to these two fantastic authors of Ace of Spades and Firekeeper's Daughter, fantastic young adult thrillers that will leave you on the edge of your seat and have you rooting for these characters, and all of the twists and turns are just so incredible. My name is Alaina Lavoie, she, her, and I'm the program manager of We Need Diverse Books and also an adjunct professor at Emerson College and a book reviewer for Booklist. And I would love to get started by just having both of you give us an elevator pitch for your book. So tell us, what are Ace of Spades and Firekeeper's Daughter about at their hearts?
Do you want to go first? Ace of Spades is a YA thriller that is Get Out meets Gossip Girl, and it can be pitched as a book that is about these Black kids that are trying to graduate without dying first because of the stress and the expectations of getting into college. And to make matters worse, there's an anonymous texter trying to take them down and reveal all their secrets. And so they have to team up and take this person down. And there's more to this person than they originally thought.
All right, I'm Angeline Boulley, and my debut book is Firekeeper's Daughter, which has been out for 10 weeks as of this recording. And it's pitched as Indigenous Nancy Drew. When 18-year-old Donis witnesses a murder, she reluctantly agrees to go undercover to find out who's distributing a deadly drug in her tribal community. And she has to use her science geekery and her knowledge about traditional Ojibwe medicines to track down the culprit, who is closer than she thinks. It can also be subtitled Love, Meth, and Hockey. And that's my book.
Thank you both for those great summaries. I could not have said it better myself. And I think that you both sort of touched on this in your elevator pitches. Both of these books deal with social themes, in particular themes that impact Black and Native teens. Why did you want to explore those issues in your books? And why do you think that thrillers and mysteries can be compelling story structures for social commentary?
I feel like when I was growing up as a teenager, I didn't really understand a lot about why things were the way they were, like structurally, and just, I guess, just on like an individual level when you would get microaggressions and everything. And so I had to go out and read people's work, Malcolm X and just other activists. And I had to learn that way. And I felt like it was very, some of the literature was very inaccessible to people. And so I wanted to make something that teenagers could read and also have fun reading, that could teach them about history and politics, but in a fun way that wasn't too traumatic and also not too information heavy. And I also think that horror and thrillers can be very good to do this with, because a lot of the time we're dealing with people's greatest fears and just things that are unsettling, and often things that are oppressive in society are unsettling. And so you can represent the things that are real in stories and in themes.
And I echo that. Growing up, I loved thrillers, especially things that didn't tie up so neatly at the end, that didn't necessarily have a happy ending, but that had a more realistic ending that was satisfying to me. So one of my favorites was I Am the Cheese by Robert Cormier. And then I loved everything by Shirley Jackson. Lois Duncan was also a favorite. And so in writing a story that I wanted to, discuss, or, my themes about identity and loss, and justice, or rather injustice, or who gets justice. I think that using the genre of a thriller to discuss social issues, we can personify some of those social issues in the form of a bad guy, you know, a bad person. But yet we can also reach that it's not just one bad guy. It is systemic. And that's certainly what I tried to do with my book, Firekeeper's Daughter.
Thank you both for sharing that. I feel like you each really deftly covered that in your books as well. Just really, they're amazing thrillers at their heart where you just want to know what happens next, but there's also so much social commentary, and there's a lot of speaking to that, the systemic issues that are covered. So thank you for touching on that. You're both debut authors. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to be a debut author for you in your specific stage in life, and you know what that process has been like, how you're feeling about it, excited, scared?
I'm 56 now, and I had the idea for my book when I was 18. I didn't start writing until I was 44, but all that time, this question about why would an undercover investigation need the help of an ordinary Ojibwe girl? That was always in the back of my mind, and I would be creating. I created during that time when I wasn't writing. And so, yeah, I've had a full career in Indian education, most recently at US Department of Education. And I think that my age works to an advantage because I've gotten to a point where I have less F's to give. And so I'm more willing to stand up for what I believe in and what I want to do. And I think that does come through in my confidence with my writing and the creative decisions that I make. Also who I choose to do business with, who I choose to partner with to bring the story to life. And yeah, so I think that being a debut author at 56 is pretty damn great.
For me, I think I really love the idea of inspiring young writers to kind of just take opportunities that might have otherwise scare them. When I was growing up, I was always so scared of doing something that was creative because I was working class, and I also I came from a background where we didn't take risks like that. We all did something that would kind of put food on the table and make sure everybody was like, we all had a house and just stability. And so wanting to be a writer just didn't feel like a sensible thing to do. And so I really, I'm just so happy to be here because I really hope that it shows people that, you know, that they can take a non-traditional route and kind of follow their dreams at any age. And yeah, I'm really glad that like there are so many young writers that are coming up and trying to take more risks and do more things that they otherwise would have told themselves not to do.
Thank you so much, both of you, for saying that. I think there's so many wonderful lessons from both of those takeaways, and I think it's inspiring for authors at both ends of the spectrum, you know. I really, really enjoyed the world building in both of these books. It's so impactful. It honestly feels like the settings in each of your books are also characters. Can you tell us a little bit about your world building process from a craft standpoint? Did you build out the world that your characters inhabit early on?
Mine, you know, my story is contemporary and it's set in my tribal community. Although I fictionalized the name of it and changed a few details, it's my tribal community. And so the world building was, you know, 75% of the way done. I just changed things so that I could have creative license in the story, and I could take the story where I wanted it to go. But very much so, I envisioned Donis Fontaine, my main character, as embodying the main cultural influences in Sault Ste. Marie. So, you know, her father is Ojibwe from Sugar Island there. And her, you know, grandmother comes from her, on her mom's non-native side, her grandmother comes from like French fur trader, you know, families, and is part of this very elite history type thing. And then her grandfather's and was an immigrant Italian stonecutter that emigrated to work on the Soo Locks and the Power Canal. So I just wanted her to embody all of these different cultural influences in the location.
For me, Ace of Spades is kind of meant to be a settingless book where there's not really a specific country or town that it's meant to basically be, because I wanted it to be as neutral as possible so that the story could almost make sense in all settings. Even though there's like references to like, you know, Americanisms and Britishisms, is very much meant to be neutral. And even like the town itself, we have like an extremely like fancy private school in the middle. And then on one end, we have kind of poverty-stricken neighborhood. And on the other hand, at the other end, we have people that live in mansions. And I really got that inspiration from kind of my upbringing. In London, we have so many neighborhoods like that. There was even like an event that happened where a block of flats burned down because the government basically didn't want to take away the kind of harmful cladding. And so there was a fire at night and it killed so many people, and many of them were Black and brown, and many of them were immigrants. And that's actually the richest neighborhood in like the UK itself. And that happened, and there's mansions surrounding that. So I wanted to show just kind of the way classism works in so many settings, and make it something that can be relatable to all people from all over the world.
What an awful true story. And thank you for sharing that. I think you did such a wonderful job making the setting feel so personal, but also so universal, if that makes sense. You know, where Firekeeper's daughter feels set in a specific community, I think Ace of Spades feels like something that, as you said, could happen anywhere. And it's amazing how well that comes across. It's very difficult to do. I'd love to talk a little bit about tropes and genre conventions. Firekeeper's daughter kind of takes on the whole DIY detective, amateur detective, while Ace of Spades both neatly fits into dark academia and really subverts a lot of the expectations about the genre. So I'd love it if you could both tell us what appealed to you about dark academia and amateur detective books respectively, and how you used your own experiences to make that device your own.
So with me, I've always loved dark academia. I grew up watching a show called House of Anubis, which is like about these kids at a boarding school, and there's a weird thing happening, and the teachers are all like trying to have like a weird thing that they're trying to do. And I just thought it was so cool. And so I've always just loved the aesthetic of it, and also just how there's always secret societies or something else going on that just feels dark and like almost fantastical. And I really felt like dark academia needed to be critiqued, even though it's so cool. I feel like it's never really critiqued in books. And so I wanted to take some of the tropes that you see in dark academia and question them while writing, and just question the whiteness of academia in general. So yeah, I really wanted to kind of turn it on its head and like make people think about dark academia in a different way.
And, you know, with my thriller, I liked, my publisher described it as genre defying thriller. And which made me feel good, because when I was querying my book, I wasn't sure, wait, is it a thriller? But it is, but it isn't. And then there's romance, but it isn't, it doesn't fit the romance. And so I really did blend a lot of different things into Firekeeper's daughter. you know, growing up, I did love mysteries. My first, I remember reading Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, and I would try to solve the mystery before they did. And so as an author now, I try to reverse engineer it and make sure that, you know, that there are some red herrings and there are some, you know, Easter eggs for future books. And I try to be multiple steps ahead of that reader so that there's always something that catches them by surprise. When they think they have it figured out, I delight in throwing in another twist. So, and those are my favorite direct messages to get from readers when they're like, I reached this one point, I was on the metro and I screamed out loud, you know, like what the, and I love that, because then that means that I accomplished what I set out to do.
Thank you for touching on that. You both did such a wonderful job with your twists in your book, and thrillers rely so much on how they conclude and how that landing, you know, that ending lands with the reader. And, you know, you mentioned red herrings and everything. Without giving it away or spoiling it, how early did you know how each of your books would end? Was that something that you planned from the beginning, or did you figure it out somewhere in the revision process and then kind of have to, you know, go through the whole book to make that ending work?
So in Ace of Spades, there's an epilogue. And so I always knew where the epilogue was going to end up, but I didn't really know how the before the epilogue would end. And so during the revision process, I was trying to figure things out. And then one day I came up with a really wild idea and I sent it to my editor and she was like, do it. So yeah, that's kind of how it happened with me.
And I would say I always knew, even before I wrote the book, I always knew the beginning, I always knew the ending, and I knew one of the villains. Everything else has changed. It's gone through different iterations as with 10 years of drafting. Basically, every character got a chance to be the villain in some draft. And there were characters that were added in the final draft that now I can't imagine the story without them. So, yeah.
That's really amazing to hear, because revising is one of the most difficult parts of writing. And I just can't imagine with both of your really engaging thrillers, how much work that had to be to go back through those drafts with keeping the plot and keeping all of the characters and adding characters. I mean, you both did a phenomenal job of making it look easier than I'm sure it was. I'd love to ask, if the characters in the last TV show that you watched were thrown right into the central plot of your book, do you think that they could figure out what's going on and make it out of the story? Or would they be the first to be conned, killed, backstabbed, or framed?
So I'm currently rewatching Ugly Betty, and I feel like Betty would really like figure out things before my character. She's very savvy and she's very like into morals and stuff, and so I think she would be less distracted than they are and like figure it out straight away. She'll be like, this is what's happening and we need to stop them.
I am on this kick of watching Schitt's Creek like on a continuous loop. And so the thought of a meth lab being in one of the motel rooms and Johnny Rose wondering what that chemical smell is coming from room number 3, you know, yeah, that's where I would drop them into the story. And I don't know that they would be, they would need Donis's help for sure. She is science geek, knows her traditions and the plants and medicines, and yeah, so they would need her help.
I couldn't agree more. I just picture Alexis finding it in the room and being like, ew, David, it's a meth lab. Do you see that?
I love that.
You both have me. I can't help picturing exactly those shows and exactly those characters. And now I'm picturing all the shows I've watched and what they would do. In some of your other interviews, you have both mentioned influences, and you've mentioned some of them today, like Nancy Drew, Get Out, and Gossip Girl. Can you talk to us about some of the other media besides those three that influenced Ace of Spades and Firekeeper's Daughter?
I think Pretty Little Lies is definitely a big one for me as well, because it was just such a, I don't know, it was a show that really consumed me and my friends' lives when we were younger. We're always trying to figure out who was like the entire time during our teen years. And while it was quite a disappointing ending in Pretty Little Liars, I think just the fun of it all, and just like constantly having these girls who were morally gray and just constantly just getting into different dramatic things really inspired me to want to write something that would kind of do the same.
And I would say for me, I was influenced by other things like music. If I know what a character listens to, I know that character. And so, you know, there were, my story set in 2004 too, which is technically considered historical fiction, even though I make a reference to Beyonce, but yeah. So music, and then I would watch different shows, but I was watching it for anyone, native actors, and seeing, you know, who did I like, who did I think could play Donis, who would be the perfect Jamie, and so, yeah, I would say that watching TV was more about finding out who I would stalk on IMDb, and and then like follow them on Twitter and this and that, and in the hopes that someday I would be able to talk with them about the show and about the Netflix series.
That is such an interesting thought that you were already thinking ahead to that. So now I just have to ask both of you, have you thought about that kind of thing? If you could pick, if you had nobody else deciding for you, who would play some of the characters in your book in a movie or a series, depending on which way it went?
I do. So there's this actress that I just adore. She's in Resident Alien, and her name is Kalela Rain, and I really like her. And then Devery Jacobs, I like her for Lily. I like Forrest Goodluck for Stormy, and Jamie, I like this actor named Joe Willette, who was in Trickster series. And for Levi, there are a couple of great choices. I think one of them might be Boo Boo Stewart. And so anyway, I've got like a Pinterest board that's just like my dream casting. And so, and unfortunately my deal with Netflix isn't cast control. So I get, I'm going to make suggestions, but it's out of my hands really. So, but in my mind, I know exactly who should be in what role.
You're a lot more like, I guess, creative than me. I'm just like constantly forgetting people's names, and I like see people sometimes and I'm like, oh, that would be really good. But yeah, those are really good options. I think because of how bad Hollywood is with like I guess making it diverse and having a lot of young Black actors is so difficult. But I really love Chloe Bailey. She's like the singer from Chloe and Halle. I think she's just so cool and she'd be a good Chiamaka. For Devon, I have no idea, but I really desperately want James McAvoy to like play an evil character. That's like my dream.
I love that. There are so many commonly used thriller tropes and devices. Do you, each of you, have any favorites? And do you have any that you definitely avoid? And also, can you give an example of a time that you felt a piece of media, a book, a movie, or a TV show just really nailed a thriller trope? You were like, wow, that's it, that's the example.
I love enemies to lovers, or have to share a hotel room, or pose as a fake relationship. And so those were my favorites. I don't like the not like every girl, but I think I touched on that a bit because Donis is so unique. Uh, and being, you know, a hockey player who's played on the boys varsity team for 4 years, and growing up in that hockey world. I would say someone that I think, Sadie by Courtney Summers. I think that I would classify it as a mystery thriller. And I just think that it was so perfectly done, and especially the audiobook, because it really elevated what an audiobook could be by intersplicing the format of the narrative of the characters and then intersplicing with this podcast called The Missing Girls. And it worked so well. It worked even best in audiobook form, because you're listening to it and you feel like you're listening to a real podcast. And I just think that to me is just superb. And
For me,
that's I'm sorry. And that was Sadie by Courtney Summers.
I loved Sadie. I thought it was so cool. It felt like a real podcast. You heard the different voices of the people and everything. For me, I think my favorite trope is like they were dead the whole time, or just you know, when you've gotten to the main twist in the book and you're like, oh my god, that was amazing, and then you realize there's another twist on top of that, and it just kind of like takes you like aback. I think a book that did that so well was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I finished reading it at 4 a.m. and I was just staring at the wall in just shock and awe. And I think a twist or a trope I hate is when like mental illness is used as like a trope to show that, like, I don't know, that this person was actually, you know, mentally ill, and that's why this was all happening and stuff. And I just find it really distasteful and, you know, offensive. So I don't think I've ever seen that done well. But yeah.
I agree, and thank you for touching on that. I think one of the things that's so frustrating about thriller and horror is how often marginalized people are thrown under the bus and secretly the villain the whole time. And I so much appreciated how Ace of Spades and Firekeeper's Daughter brought characters to the front and center, and it wasn't about that. Nobody was being thrown under the bus for their identity, or, you know, none of those tropes were used. So I think it's such an important part of adding to the canon of thriller, which has historically been so straight, white, cis, non-disabled. I'm curious if there are any fictitious aspects of your books that you wish existed in your life. What would you take from your world and make into a reality? And I know that's a weird question because they're thrillers, so I'm not saying bring the killer into your life.
My book has there's a certain ceremony at, you know, that a healing ceremony, and that's something that I would like to see a version of it, you know, in different communities, native or non-native, to help, you know, help people who have you know, been the victim of sexual assault, and just something that helps to heal.
For me, I have like a very small detail that people probably won't pick up, but the library in the school, because the school's so like fancy, the library has every single book published ever. in the world. And so I really want that to be a thing. So I love libraries, and just the idea of being able to access any book that has ever been published is amazing.
I mean, that's a dream come true. I think you summed it up right there.
Yeah.
It's like Belle and Beauty and the Beast's dream come true. Puts that library to shame. If the characters in your book showed up on your doorstep tomorrow, who do you think you'd get along best with? And is there anyone that you'd be pretty annoyed by?
Well, Granny June in the book is based on a real person, and she's my cousin's grandma. And I would take her to garage sales, and this elder would start every conversation as if she was yelling at you, and you were in the middle of an argument that you didn't know. Like, she would just drop right into this argument, yelling, and then realizing that that's how she talks to everybody. And we went garage sales looking for pristine hardcover copies of James Michener, was what this elder had really wanted. And so I put that in the book as like an homage to her.
I think I wouldn't get along with most of the characters because they all have something about them that makes me as a person annoyed. But I think I would get along with the character Terrell the most, because he's just very straightforward and honest and fun to be around. And I think a character that I would be annoyed to see the most, or hate to see, is probably the character Jack. I just think he's a coward, and I hate cowards.
I'm impressed you were able to write a book where so many of your characters annoyed you on some level. I'd love for both of you to tell us about a few recently published or forthcoming books that you absolutely loved. And they don't have to also be YA thrillers, but it's cool if some of them are.
I have to check Goodreads.
So I loved, I read The Girls I've Been by Tess Sharp, and I just, that to me was everything. I just read the new release by Andy Weir, Project Hail Mary, and I loved that. I finished Tokyo Ever After, The Marsh King's Daughter, I'm Not Dying With You Tonight, and I'm looking forward to Blackout by 6 legends of YA. And I'm so excited for that. I just can't wait.
Same. I recently read and loved the 4th volume in the Heartstopper series, House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland, and Akwaeke Emezi's The Death of Vivek Oji. That really, really got to me because it's set in Nigeria. And so I felt so connected. I've never been to Nigeria before, even though it's my cultural background. And a book I'm really looking forward to is also Blackout. That's just going to be legendary.
Yeah. Yep. I think that they should have the book selling parties at midnight, at 12:01, the night before. I will be in line. I will be, yes, I would love that. And I forgot to add, this is one of the perks of being an author that no one really tells you about, is that you get to read advanced copies of books by your favorite authors if they want an author blurb from you. And so one of my favorite books in the world is The Marrow Thieves by Cherie Dimaline. And I was able to read the sequel called Hunting by Stars. It comes out this fall, and it's incredible. And so that's like this perk that I'm enjoying.
What a wonderful author perk. Reading advanced copies of books is probably the most thrilling thing in the world. I treasure it every time I get the chance to do it. And I know I'm so excited for Blackout. It's a shame that we're still sort of in this limbo period with the pandemic, that we can't just have everyone at a panel. I'm glad we're taking things safely, but I'm personally so excited to go back to author events in person. I would love to meet both of you. There's so many authors I've read in the past year that I'm like, I would love to meet you. I would love to have you sign my book. I would love to do more than just hear you on a screen, but it has been so wonderful. You two have made it feel like we are all together here. I feel like I've met you in person, and I hope that we get to meet in real life somehow, someday. And I want to thank you both so much for sharing your absolutely wonderful books with everyone here at Comic-Con at Home. And thank you so much to all of our readers and attendees for being here and for letting us join you in your home or wherever you're watching from. Thank you so much.